Okay, we should be, yeah, we're on.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Solutions Network Radio with Gail, Marie, and Nicole. Today we're doing a live stream. We have with us some special guests from the Modern Knowledge Tour. Michael Tellinger, who is the leader of the Ubuntu Party of South Africa. Richard Dolan, who is one of the leading researchers and historians related to UFOs. And David Whitehead, who is the co-organizer and host of the tour. Also joining us, we have Rick Deschaines with us, and he is working closely with Nicole and I for the I.Accuse Taking Back Final Decision-Making Authority. Are we all here, gentlemen and lady?
I'm here. Thanks for having us on. This is David speaking, and I've got Michael joining us. Richard just had to grab something. He'll be joining us in a second.
Awesome.
Hello, everybody. This is Michael Tellinger here.
Hi, Michael. Actually, why don't we start? We'll start with introductions again. Each of you can tell a little bit about yourselves for those people that may not be aware. So, Michael, if you're here, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a researcher into origins of humankind and the nature of reality and all those kind of wonderful, funky things. And also I'm the founder of the Ubuntu Liberation Movement that became a political party in South Africa, and we just recently participated in the South African elections on the 7th of May, 2014.
Awesome. We'll have to talk more about that as time goes on to see what we can learn about what worked and what didn't work for you. Richard, are you with us too? Richard
I just got here, yes.
Okay. Do you want to just tell, for those that may not be familiar with you, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your passion is?
Well, for the last 20 years, I've immersed myself into the study of what we would call unidentified flying objects, UFOs, and everything related to that. It's been a long journey. I've written a number of volumes of history dealing with the modern aspects of the phenomenon, including the politics, including the cover-up, and all of the other elements dealing with the citizen movements to end secrecy on UFOs. I wrote a speculative book about the future a few years ago called AD, After Disclosure, what the world might look like in the aftermath of the end of secrecy. And I've just finished a new overall study, really redefining and reevaluating the entire subject, which I've called UFOs for the 21st Century Mind.
Fantastic. And David Whitehead.
Hi, guys. Thank you again for having us on this interview. We're honored to be here. My background is that I'm basically just an average, everyday, normal guy. I live in Toronto, Canada. I've done independent research into these alternative, or what might be called alternative fields, for probably about the last 10 years. I've been very passionate about seeking knowledge and understanding. And I run a full-time business with my wife. And we basically operate a martial arts facility in Toronto. And we're trying to empower people through bringing back the philosophy of the warrior tradition, to try to seek to empower those, that are suffering from not having the confidence or the fortitude to be able to deal with these types of issues. And I think that that's a huge thing that is kind of missing. So that's kind of my contribution. And then, of course, I'm in league with my partner Chris Rusak in this project of the Modern Knowledge Tour. We thought we have contacts with some great researchers. We've been fans of their work, and they've helped us so much. How can we get this out to the people of Canada? Because there's a lot of people in this country that are not aware of the work of these great people. So we organized this tour. It's something that has taken off on its own and developed its own wings. And we've done 3 events out of the 12. We're actually going from Halifax, Nova Scotia, all the way to Vancouver, British Columbia. And so far, the reception has been unbelievable. We've gotten support from all over the country and indeed all over the world. We have people that are tuning in from all over the world to check out this endeavor. So it's really turned into something that could be far beyond our wildest dreams.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And what's so wonderful about it is that it's spreading worldwide, right? None of these solutions are just for one particular country or one particular area, but there's solutions that can be spread across the world.
That's exactly right, and that's the message we're trying to send, is that we're not just countries, we're not just, this person and that person and all these different divisions that we have in our modern society today. We're ultimately human beings. We're all living on this planet. We share this planet with other living beings, and it's important to really think about these things in a deep way and try to understand our past. Where did we come from? What's the origin of all of the different mechanisms in our society that are suppressing us now in this time? And how can we free ourselves? How can we put something forward into the future that will be positive and that would benefit everybody? And the only way we can achieve that is if we can bridge the gap between ignorance and knowledge of what's true and what's real and what the solutions actually are. And so I just said, let's get the top minds on this, the top philosophers, the top truth warriors of our time, bring them together in one room and watch the magic happen. And I didn't know how it was going to be. My partner and I, Chris, we've looked at each other many times with a sort of a surprised expression on our face when we look at the reactions from the crowd, because it's very, very powerful when you bring many different pieces of the puzzle together for people, and they just sit back in awe as they see the bigger picture. And that reaction alone shows us that we're on the right track with what we're doing here.
Yeah. Yeah, and knowledge alleviates a lot of fear. I mean, we've been programmed with a lot of fear, and once you are able to see that big picture, or even just the small picture as it relates to you, that allows us to let go of a lot of fear, because then we're seeing solutions, which is what we're focused on here. Nicole, do you want to take a minute just to talk about what your passion is?
Yeah, hi, everybody. I got too many passions to talk about. We don't have all day. But my passion is right now to stop globalization, to make sure that the Indigenous peoples get what what they truly deserve, which is respect from everybody worldwide, not just Canadians, and to honor the treaties, and what was promised to them. So that's basically what I've been working on.
Super. And Rick?
Hi, guys. How are you guys?
Good.
Yeah,
great.
I'd like to congratulate David on his great effort. I mean, this is fantastic. What you're doing is just unspoken, and I really am a great fan of both Richard Dolan and Michael Tellinger. And especially Michael, in all the archaeology you've done and the work you've done, and the Ubuntu Party, of course. And I've been working with Nicole to get the IAQ's website really going across Canada, so we can go towards decolonization and bring people into the new ideology of what the government represents and what it actually is. Actually, it's a huge fraud. And like Michael has pointed out several times, I think the population needs to understand that. A lot of people can't wrap their minds around it because it's so covert and in disguise. But I think that with programs like we're doing today, I think that can become a reality in a very short period of time. It's just getting people to participate and to come to these meetings and to listen. So congratulations to all of you. And I'll be following your tour across Canada on the internet, and I'm trying to bring a little bit of my own contribution in there too. So that's basically what I'm all about. And I also want to do the Ubuntu Party here in Canada. I'm looking for ways to do that, and I'd like to speak to Michael when I'm in Toronto on the 6th. When we'll be there, I'd like to maybe speak a little bit in private with Michael and see what the options could be for Canada and the Ubuntu Party. So that's what I'm about.
Okay.
So back to you guys.
Thanks. Just briefly, my passion and focus is on personal empowerment. Created the WISE approach, which are tools and techniques to allow people to free themselves and manage their emotions. So you may find that I come from that perspective an awful lot, but so why don't we get started? The focus of today's live stream is on solutions. So maybe Michael, if you could start talking about where you're coming from, what you're doing as far as solutions, and maybe as a group we can relate it to relate the understanding for people for them to see the benefit for them.
Thanks very much. Yes, I think the best place to get everything under one roof or in one place would be to take a look at my book, Ubuntu Contributionism, A Blueprint for Human Prosperity, that I wrote specifically for this reason, because you can imagine I get asked questions that are, in people's minds, very simple questions, but they don't have simple answers. They have long, involved answers that are actually simple. But it does entail a lot of information and dovetails many areas of our lives that needs to be presented in a chronological, step-by-step, bite-sized chunk presentation, which I did exactly for that reason. That's why I wrote the book, to put out there. But in essence, the Ubuntu philosophy is a very ancient philosophy in Africa, and it's echoed around the world by native people of every society, pretty much. And it talks about unity, people living and surviving in harmony, and unity of the people in community, and creating abundance for everybody, and moving away from a capitalistic model where money is used to control everything and enslave people, and slowly but surely using money itself to move away from the money system until you realize that you don't actually need the money, that you actually need people, because in essence it's people that do everything. Money does nothing. It just gets in the way of people achieving their goals on a daily basis. So the Ubuntu movement has now grown to more than 200 countries around the world. The philosophy is on our website in as much detail as I could put out. More is in the book, you know, as Rick mentioned, there are now movements in more than 12 countries that are putting together what will be, I believe, the first transnational, transborder, global political movement of consciousness, of higher consciousness, with the same philosophy that crosses borders. And we certainly need to talk about that when we get to Toronto. We have certain ideas for the group that's traveling here about how to launch the Ubuntu Party in Canada and start promoting these very unifying principles and unity consciousness on a political platform that I believe everybody resonates with when they see it and hear it. It is like a drug. Once you see it and you know that it's a reality and it is a true option for humanity to free us from this draconian enslavement and this financial and economic torture that all of us are exposed to. Once you get a hold of this and you realize that there is truly a solution, that there really is a way out of this mess, it becomes a drug. And I've seen it now over the last 10 years since I've been working on this, how it's taking a hold of people and how excited they become when they see this. And it's truly a very empowering situation to get into for everybody that comes face to face with the Ubuntu and contributionist philosophy. Yeah, I guess I hope that explains a little bit about what we're doing.
Yes, that was awesome, and I could feel the passion in your words. What kinds of what do you run into as far as people that are not really showing, not, how can I word this? They fall into the pitfalls of the whole money thing. Is that like the main thing that people kind of fluff you off because they don't have the money? Like they can't get past that whole money idea?
Yes, look, somebody mentioned it earlier. Everything in our lives get driven by fear.
Yeah.
The fear of scarcity, fear of death, fear of cancer, fear of authority, fear of your neighbor, fear of dogs, fear of cats, fear of disease. I mean, everything in our lives is completely and utterly driven by fear, and that is not by accident, that's by design.
Yeah.
And once we realize where the problems are, once we realize that governments are not our friends, that governments are actually draconian institutions there to control humanity and turn us into submissive working ants that just march to the beat of their drum, of their draconian control, it's very simple to figure out what to do about it. And this is the status quo all over the world. Doesn't matter what country you go to. And pretty much, you know, as you know, most of the countries that, or some of the countries that have most freedom are often the countries that get attacked by those that are most draconianly controlled. Yeah. And those free governments get destroyed. And that has pretty much happened in the last 100 years. And so people that don't understand this, it's just really a knee-jerk reaction to when they first come face to face with us, with the suggestion of we have to move away from money, or we have to create a moneyless society. It's just a knee-jerk reaction that comes out of fear. Once they start paging through the philosophy and through understanding how money is being used as a tool of control, and I say absolute tool of control, not just a whimsical, partial tool of control. This is it. That's the tool that keeps the control in place. So once they get past that, then they start to realize that when you remove money from the system, you don't go backwards to live in cages or caves in the dark age. You don't have scarcity. You actually have the opposite. You have unbridled invention. You have unbridled and unimaginable abundance on all level of human endeavor, from food to arts and culture to science and technology. That is the immediate, a very rapid consequence of creating a free and a moneyless society. And there are many examples in relatively recent history and ancient history as well, where people who or countries and places around the world that employed that kind of philosophy thrived beyond our wildest imagination. So, generally speaking, to answer your question, is there any resistance? The only resistance there is an initial resistance by those who just live in fear and have not really been exposed to the reality as to who is truly in control of our lives in our countries.
Yeah.
And what we've been doing in the elections in South Africa is very focused message to the people of South Africa, which I believe should be the message for all other countries that adopt this, is to remind people that the government is the servant of the people. The government was elected to serve the people. And the moment you say that, everybody immediately realizes that there are very few governments, if any, that are actually serving the people, but actually serving themselves, using the people as the slaves. And therefore, any laws, bills, and acts that get passed by a government of the people that does not serve the people must immediately be seen as a move to oppress and control the people. Yeah. And it becomes very obvious to see what we need to do about that.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting, too. I did another radio show a few months back where I was focusing on people and their passions. And it was really difficult in many cases to find people that actually felt the benefit of focusing on your passion. I mean, everybody says, yeah, I'd love to do this or I'd love to do that. But to actually focus on that rather than the whole money aspect, because you're absolutely right, there's a whole survival aspect that comes into it and the whole fear programming. And so I think it's important, too, that we in order to, one of the steps of getting people to a place where they can actually not fear looking at something like this as being real, is to have them focus on their passion. What do you love to do? What would you love to do if there was no sort of money, nothing in your way? What would you choose to do?
Yeah, the only problem with that is that people often throw the questions at you. They say, well, if I just follow my passion, how are we going to pay for things? And, the what I call 13 frequently asked questions.
Right.
And it's fantastic how we can see how we've all been equally programmed, because our minds all seem to be equally tainted, because I've filtered down thousands and thousands of questions down to basically 13 most frequently asked questions, and from there all the others flow. Right. And that's a fantastic situation to be in, because in essence we have to solve 13 problems and we can live in utopia.
Yeah, and it gets the conversation going though, right? Like, we need to have the conversation, because without it, we don't get answers to those questions, so we don't resolve those issues.
Yeah, we do need to have the conversation, but I must also just, warn against having conversations with people that argue from a perspective of ignorance, and sometimes they can dig their heels in, and it can be a very fruitless conversation. It doesn't really go anywhere.
Well, no, arguments.
Yeah.
Arguments
so
are not.
It's often better to give somebody a presentation and give them the facts. And once they get the facts, so basically people need to get educated on the facts. And you can't have the conversation with people that keep digging their heels and say, well, that's not true, I don't believe that. And if they keep arguing, saying, I don't believe that, and where you get that from, that doesn't really benefit anybody in the long run. It's just a very frustrating conversation for somebody like me. So this is why I believe that the book that I've put out there hopefully will lay the foundation for people to inform themselves. Once they have that knowledge and information, then we can have a conversation, an intelligent conversation, where they can argue or question things based on a certain level of knowledge. Because you can't really debate this if you still believe that the government is your friend. It's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, no. I don't, arguing and debating, I don't believe is the answer either. What I like to do, and you may very well do this, but I like to ask questions. Because I find questions goes beyond the programming that we have, and they start to think. I don't claim to know the answers, but the questions that I ask, I know the answer that will come up. And so that makes the people start to question. I don't argue with them. And I don't suggest anybody argue with them, because that's more a division than a uniting factor.
No, absolutely. That's the way it should be, and I like doing that. Generally speaking, when I do get into a situation where I'm confronted by a person that is really obstructional, I turn it around and I start asking them questions about their reality, about so how is money created, and where does this come from, and how does this work, and you find very quickly they talk themselves into a corner, and they suddenly realize that they don't know. They don't know. So that's a very good way of disarming people that are obstructional or really argumentative. Start asking them questions about things that you know that they don't know.
Yeah.
And they trip themselves up.
Well, and it keeps them from getting their back up that you're a know-it-all, right? Because you're not a know-it-all.
That's right.
And so there's no reason for them to get defensive, because as soon as people get defensive, then they shut down, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's awesome. Anybody else have anything to add?
Well, I would jump in here.
Okay.
If I may. Okay. My question is more on the banking system with Michael, because I have personally seen your book, and I've read a lot of your literature, and I do know. But for the audience and for people who are just pretty much new to this, I'd like Michael to just give us a bird's eye view on the banking system, because I know there's extensive work that he's done on this, and he's been through courts and everything, and I've followed the whole thing, but. Just for our audience, I'd like him to just explain a little bit of bird's eye view on the new banking system that would be implemented if ever we had the Ubuntu party here, so that to give a feel to the audience about about the doability and the possibilities that this opens up. So could you just speak a little bit about that, Michael, if you will?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Just very briefly, for people that don't know anything about the banking system, it is a shock and horror story when they find out what it really is and how it works. And the truth is so horrific that many people are not ready for that truth. So they close their eyes and close their ears and say, well, that can't be true, because that means that the whole global banking system is one giant corrupt criminal activity. And guess what? That's exactly what it is. It's the largest organized crime syndicate in the world. That's pretty much in a nutshell how you can describe it.
Exactly.
And so if we start from that point of departure, and once people go through the horror and the shock of realizing that that's what we're dealing with, and that is that it's a criminal element throughout global governments that has actually enslaved us all. Once people realize this and they've gone over the shock and they calm down, then we can start moving ahead and planning for the future. And you can't just move from a money-driven society the way that we've been conditioned now into a moneyless society. That's not going to happen. I mean, that's just going to cause absolute chaos and absolute, anarchy and warfare and whatever. That's not the solution. So there are obviously a sequence of incremental steps that we need to go through to remove ourselves from our dependence on money the way we use it today. And what we were promoting in South Africa into the elections was the establishment of a people's bank. And, I openly went on radio and on television through our campaign saying that we're going to close down the Reserve Bank, which is the equivalent of the Federal Reserve Bank in the USA and the Bank of England, stating that we will close the Reserve Bank and replace it with a people's bank that issues money for the people, by the people, tax-free and interest-free. And explaining to people that the only reason we pay tax, interest, fees, levies, duties, all the nonsense that is imposed and thrust upon us is payable because of the illegitimate, corrupt, and criminal elements of the banking system that is imposed on us. Because these are all private corporations that have been given permission, the central banks and private corporations that are being given permission to dictate our financial policy, our economic policy to our governments, and to the people of our respective countries. And this is why we pay tax and interest, because this is for their benefit. These private corporations benefit. If we shut them down and close them and replace them with a people's bank that issues money for the people, by the people, there will be no tax payable, no need or necessity for tax, levies, anything. Money will be available for everything and anything that people in their communities need to do, and that money will be made available on a very basic system. Then there are brilliant examples of such banks in the past, and also brilliant examples of how quickly they bring success and abundance to those respective countries. It is like virtually a miracle cure. It leads to 100% employment. It leads to everything being fixed and sorted out and everything being available. It is truly a rapid. It's like an adrenaline injection into the economy of any country. And what it also then does is it starts to make people realize if it is allowed to last long enough, which unfortunately in the past this has never happened, because the influence of these private banking families is so strong and powerful. They always somehow manage to infiltrate the political arena and get their way back and overthrow those governments that have allowed these people's banks and reinstitute their private banks as the lawful provider of the private money to the people and therefore enslave the people. So we've had great examples in the past of these successes, but they didn't always last long enough to show the eventual outcome of it. What I believe is that the eventual outcome will be people start realizing that as this money is made available for everything that we need in our communities and society, they'll realize that we actually don't need the money, because the money doesn't do the work. It's the people that do the work, right? And remember, money does nothing. Yeah. People do everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
Brings life
and slowly but surely, just to finish this thought, we wean ourselves off the dependence and the obsession with money and realize that we actually don't need it at all. And this is where the very important philosophy and concept of Ubuntu and contributionism comes in and starts to play a critical role in transforming our communities from money-driven societies to communities driven by people and their passion for life and their skills for life.
Awesome.
Thank you, Michael. That's great.
And just for Canadians that are listening, the Bank of Canada actually is owned by the people. It has since been hijacked. And if you look in the charts from 1974 on, you'll notice a significant increase in the debt as a result of that hijacking. So I just wanted to throw that out there for any Canadians that may not be aware. Because I think there's so much deception. I mean, I think back, 10 years when I think I thought I knew things. And today I'm like, wow, I didn't know anything. Everything that I thought I knew was wrong. We've been deceived all along.
Could I ask a question to Richard?
Yes, I'm right here.
Yeah, Richard, if you could speak a little bit about exactly what we're talking about, government corruption, and how real and how actual it really is. Because a lot of people can't wrap their minds around that. They think of government as their saviors and political parties and all, and they just can't really understand how serious this is and how far it goes. So could you bring us down that rabbit hole, please?
Yes, very gladly. I think of, I'm from the United States. I'm an American citizen. when I look at my country, I sometimes visualize a dead body lying on the road. That's the government. But the body's wearing the clothes it had on, recently. So you poke it with a stick and it doesn't move, but then you think, oh, it's wearing the same clothing it had last week, so it's probably fine. That clothing are the formal structure, President, Supreme Court, Congress, and so forth. They're still there, but the body's dead. And what's really happened in the last number of generations, this has taken a long time, by degrees, is that a new type of system has taken over and transformed our world, and the problem that most of us have is that we're still thinking old ways. We're thinking, and it's the same in Canada. You elect your member of parliament, your representative, and if they don't do a good job, you throw the bums out and you elect somebody new. But that's really not how the system works. And as Michael was discussing, and many other people have been talking about, what we're dealing with is a transnational system that's come into place. This is something I've studied quite a bit. I got into this whole thing, as I mentioned earlier, through the study of UFOs, and you think, well, why is that even relevant? Well, what you find is in this matrix-like world that we live in, there are a number of issues that once you delve deeply into it, allow you to peer through that veil of illusion, that veil of reality, and you start realizing, my reality isn't quite what I thought it was when I was growing up. What else is wrong? In my case, by looking into this bizarre phenomenon that is not supposed to exist, this phenomenon of objects doing impossible things that people have been noting and recording for a long time now. Objects that zigzag, that shoot straight up, this is just one aspect of it. What we find is that there's this enormous discrepancy, this lie that's being foisted upon us, and that lie is simply the tip of the iceberg. It's symptomatic of a larger series of lies that are foisted upon people. In delving into this phenomenon, as I have done now for 20 years, it's opened up a series of questions. So I initially thought, well, is this a real thing that my government officials were interested in? Turns out that, yes, they absolutely have been. That leads to a question. Why has this not been discussed openly, fairly, responsibly in the mainstream media? Why has this not been discussed openly and fairly in the political institutions? And that leads to a study of control over them. And so what you end up seeing, what I have ended up seeing, is that there's this a hijacked system in which you have governments that, in theory, are responsive to people, but in fact, in reality, are not responsive to people at all, which treat people as though they're children, spoon-feeding them BS day in, day out. And it stupefies people. You go through this reality where this incredible important thing is going on and no one's allowed to talk about it. That does bad things to the psyche. I would want to follow on one comment that one of you made earlier about following your passion, and this is something I believe very strongly in. Whether you're in a moneyless or moneyed society, I think it's critical for people who have a passion, have something burning inside them that's there. You have to learn to throw the fear away. You have to do that because it's really the only way, I think, to achieve a kind of real satisfaction with yourself, with your soul, with who you're meant to be. There's always, all of life is got risk, but it's only by taking that risk, going into the unknown and exploring and finding out who you are, what you're really made out of, that I think makes life worthwhile. And the last thing I would just say I've sort of moved off of your question here, forgive me, but there's a tremendous reward in following that passion. For myself, in studying this most impenetrable of mysteries, this UFO phenomenon, which is more than just technology, it deals with consciousness, it deals with politics, it deals with everything.
I agree.
That the journey of exploring this has opened up more intellectual doors and emotional doors for me than I could possibly have imagined, because it's forced me to confront layer after layer of deception of my own society, and also deception within myself that I had accumulated as a young person growing up, and that still bombards me. So you challenge your society, you challenge yourself, and that's the greatest reward that you can get.
Yeah, we've all been deceived, and a lot of people don't realize that, and a lot of people are just seeing the government as their hero and as their savior, and it's always the same excuse. The government will fix things, and don't worry, and we'll just leave them do whatever they're doing, and everything will be fine tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm sorry to jump in, but there's one very important point, and this actually dovetails with much of what Michael was talking about. What I've determined in my own study of the secrecy on the UFO phenomenon is that the future of all of us, the rest of the world, has been hijacked and has been held hostage. And that is, when you really get into what we call black budget issues, the clandestine world, it is obvious, it is very obvious, that they have classified technologies and patents in terms of, particularly in form of energy, but in a lot of other areas, that I think the rest of us would like to know about, and that would have the real possibility of transforming our world, I think, for the better, rather than keeping us stuck and enslaved in a financially controlled, petroleum-dominated type of global infrastructure. There are answers. I am convinced that what we call the black world, the black budget world, has got many, if not most, if not all of those answers. And they are keeping those answers, many of which I think they've gotten through their own interaction with this UFO phenomenon. They're keeping those answers because, A, I think they're afraid for their own position, that by giving up this information, they become at risk. B, they are probably afraid of destabilization as they see it in this world. After all, if you give people access to an energy source that's not petroleum-based, who knows what the sky is the limit. And I'm certain that they don't want that. So what that does is it forces a greater and greater disconnect between the reality that some of them are living, which I call the breakaway civilization, and what the rest of us are living. We're being held like a big rope is holding us, tying us back, and we can't take a step forward. Or if we're taking baby steps forward compared with where they are at. So that's another aspect of this. And I do believe that it's only when we transform our energy paradigm that we're really going to have a genuine opportunity to transform this world for the better. Right now, we're stuck in a petroleum-based, extraction-based, control-based type of energy paradigm that's keeping most of the world in misery.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Go ahead, Nicole.
Hi. I hope you guys don't mind. I've been kind of playing with the screen here. I'm kind of learning how to do all this. But anyways, I'd really like to thank everybody for being here, and it was really important for us to get you on board. Because what we've been working on, we have a group of people, and we came up with the I accuse kind of subliminal message there. Canada, and what we're trying to do is to get the word out there that if we had a direct participatory democracy, we'd be able to have disclosure on everything. There would be no more having to file for the Freedom of Information Act, which is kind of getting out of hand now because they're demanding 600 to 1,000 days before they even reply to you. So by Canadians changing
My
our...
God, that's 3 years. 3 years.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It's nuts. Yeah. And they pick and choose how long they want to give you how long they'll take to give you the information. But the thing is with Canada, they're saying that we have a direct democracy. And Trudeau said in 1982 that now Canadians have the right to amend their constitution. So at first we were looking at political decolonization at the international level for the Indigenous peoples here, the nations, because they're saying that Canada and the United States were decolonized and they're too big. And by allowing self-determination, what they were saying is they were going to give the nations self-determination and self-governance, which is a crock because that was to their own reserves and territories. And when you're looking at it from the international level, which Michael, I'm sure you've dealt with with this in Africa, political decolonization should give them a lot more pull and a lot more say in what happens to Canada or the United States. So everything that the governments have done leading up to now was to blindside them into not filing for political decolonization. And when we were looking at what the UN was doing and being the puppet masters for globalization under ICLEI and a lot of things that are happening here in making the indigenous nations' territories, turning them into fee simple land ownership, which removes all of their rights, other than their interest in land, is kind of crazy. So we thought, okay, well, let's see about political decolonization, see if, what the nations get together and they'd be able to apply for political decolonization. Then maybe we can stop globalization. Then a few years later, we've decided, okay, well, this is taking too long. How can Canadians help? And what our government is doing to these Indigenous people is just beyond pathetic, beyond any common sense. And yet, what they use words that will make all Canadians think, oh wow, they're going to get clean water, they're going to get this, and they're going to get that, and it's just hogwash. And it's manipulation on a total assimilation of the First Nations, the nations across Canada, into this government and then into global governance. So I Accuse was born through Rick's genius there. He wanted something that, was catchy. And we couldn't have asked for better under I Accuse, which is Indigenous and Civil Unified Sovereign Enactment. And when we approached people with this, Gail created a letter which basically tells the government that, and all the MPs that they're going to now become, what they're supposed to be, which is civil servants, and their leaders or their bosses will be the people. So in Canada, with one referendum, we'd be able to do a slam dunk. If we can get the people to sign a an official declaration, or even a referendum. So we've got two choices there, and if all else fails, and we can't get at least 16 million signatures, or to the Supreme Courts to recognize the people's signatures, then our only other recourse would be a Ubuntu party for everybody to get on board with. Because in Canada, the Constitution was 147 years old, and it's only been added on to in 1982, and no Canadian has really had an opportunity. We've never had an opportunity to discuss the whole Constitution and to remove it from the colonial powers and the colonial terms and all of the crap that they've added since then. So this was an opportunity for us to possibly try and get together with other people worldwide to do the same thing. You've got the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, who are under colonial rule. Our laws are still the same, even though they're saying we've decolonized, which was bogus. So, if we all got together and kind of compared notes, supported each other, and supported the people, I think the Indigenous peoples and here the Canadian citizens or even the U.S. citizens would truly benefit in stopping this globalization and stopping all of the things that are happening to our natural resources, like the tar sand, the frackings, the chemtrails, even the UFO information. We'd be able to have access to all of that information finally, and nothing has to fall apart. All we're saying is let's remove final decision-making authority, and deals like China, FIPA, the TPP, would all go to the wayside because we have not been consulted. And then they would not be able to make these deals. Go ahead.
I'd just like to congratulate you on your sentiments, which I love to hear. I only want to add, which is that there's a tremendous hunger that people have around the world for this type of information. And they often don't realize that they're hungry for it until they're confronted with it. I think we all are seeing in the last generation, last decade, a real transformation and a radicalization in the best and truest sense of that word. The word radical derives from the word to get to the root of. And I think that what we're really doing increasingly is we're getting to the root of some of these problems that have been affecting us in our society, whether it's dealing with central banking, which is critically important, whether it's dealing with energy, whether it's dealing with the black budget. The problem, UFOs, the problem is that we're still surrounded, enveloped by a corporate government national security media complex that exists only to distract and stupefy. And so it's like getting out of the matrix. But in people, they're hungry. I have seen this so many times. They're not aware until you spend 5-10 minutes with them and you start throwing these issues out at them, and the light bulbs go on, right? I mean, I'm sure you've had this happen with you. And that's an encouraging sign. And what we have to do is we have to organize. We have to work together. And we have to build bridges across all of these issues. You mentioned chemtrails. That's absolutely critical. And we're finding more and more individuals around the world are tuning in to the dangers and the reality of what chemtrails are. So I wanted to applaud what you had to say on that.
Well, thank you so much. It's just that, a lot of people are looking at all of these problems that we're having worldwide, and actually the answer is very simple. One referendum. All we need to do is stop the arguing. Like everybody has an opinion, right? Everybody has an idea. But there is one question that we'd like to stress and just focus on. If we all focus on this one question worldwide, I think huge change would come about in a very fast way because, it's common sense. So the question would be, who is best to decide for you, your family, and your country? You or an MP or MPPs that you elect to make decisions for you and to dictate what happens to you, your family, and this country. Everybody that we've talked to right away says, I do. And they love it.
I'm just, if I may, this is Michael here. I'm just a little bit concerned about the referendum because, it doesn't matter how many signatures you get. Ultimately, it's going to be placed in front of a corrupt government that is controlled by a central bank that is run by the banking families. So you can have the goodwill of the people in a referendum, but unless you have a government of the people that is a true servant of the people, they will probably accept the referendum, but then immediately, as quickly as they accept it, start breaking it down and working behind the scenes to overthrow it. And that's my only concern. So unfortunately, the current governments we have are just puppets and instruments of the central banks to keep upholding and the rights and the laws that protect the banks, make more laws week in, week out, pass new laws that are not for the benefit of the people, but for the benefit of the financial and the corporate draconian control over the people. And that is unfortunately the status quo. So I believe that the Ubuntu Party, the Ubuntu movement that has now become a political platform for the philosophy of Ubuntu and contributionism may eventually become the only way out. While the referendum will certainly bring a lot of focus and information to the people, the next logical step would then be to have something like an Ubuntu Party in Canada that can take this to its full conclusion and actually become the government of the people that delivers on the will of the people. And so that's just my thoughts on that.
Okay.
I so much agree with you, Michael.
Yes, and here in Canada, we have the Indigenous nations. Okay, we're having feedback.
What, sorry?
In Canada, we have something that's called the Great Law, and this comes from the Haudenosaunee nations, the Iroquois, and they've actually used it to create the U.S. Constitution. And they're the ones who helped create it, but then the U.S. Constitution was defiled. But it's based a lot on the Ubuntu belief system as well. For them, like they have something called the dish with one spoon, where everybody eats, everybody shares, and it's actually very beautiful. So if you'd like to, I'd be able to send you some information on what they call the Great Law, the White Roots of Peace. And this document was researched as the oldest living constitution on Earth by 200 researchers from around the world. And these people have been so suppressed, and I think they've been suppressed because of things like the Ubuntu movement and the philosophy, as well as the Great Law philosophy here in Canada and the United States. So the Ubuntu, with us, what we're trying to create is what we are calling a two-row living constitution. Now, because the nations would still have the right to file for political decolonization at the international level, and if we join together within the two-row, their two-row means that when they sign the two-row, they sign with about 500 people, possibly, I would say max. And they made this treaty, like with the Dutch, and it said that the boat and the canoe will each go on they will go side by side on the waters of life, the rivers of life, and neither will interfere with each other. Well, that was great with only 500 immigrants here, but now we're up to 330 million between Canada and the United States, and now they are down to from almost 100 million to 5 million, roughly. So, with that, I think if we supported them, we would have another edge against this corrupt government. And we could also pick and choose whoever's going to do our elections and do it ourselves and see how many numbers we get. So I think our scenario would be a little bit different. And then with the technology we have here and the access to information, if we started the ball rolling, I think we get really far. And by promoting Ubuntu and the Great Law and other indigenous nations and their cultures and their teachings, it all comes back to ancient teachings, which are being suppressed for eons by the crown and the Vatican and like all the religions who are trying to control these people.
If I could just speak, and I just want to say, first of all, that I'm completely honored to be sitting at a round table with Richard and Michael, and I was one of those regular people that was just curious, as I was saying before, and I came across their websites, their videos, their books, and was inspired. And this is what I feel is that when we started this idea of a tour, it was to try to bring regular people forward to communicate and to share with each other, people in this society, people that are living under this very, very suppressive within this very suppressive society, and how can we bring them together to come up with ideas. So I think that this is absolutely fantastic, and I think that one thing that I could contribute is to say that there's also that factor that people are afraid to act. People are aware to some degree. This is the sentiment that I have, is that people are aware of these issues, but they don't know where to go. They don't know how to really bring something into manifestation. And a lot of that is driven by what Michael was mentioning, how we're basically conditioned from cradle to grave, and everything is based on the foundation of fear and creating, this artificial scarcity, which creates that stress and that anxiety. And so my tradition is to bring forward a way of empowering people. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just a regular person that decided to research to gain the knowledge that would lead towards liberation. And if people can realize that all starts within, it all starts from within. And, you think of the hero's journey in so many of these different myths and legends and stories. We even see it in our modern culture today in things like movies and things like that, where they're talking about this movement from being fixed in fear and being, counted out as the little guy and disregarded. But then all of a sudden this person rises to great stature and can achieve great things. And it's showing the progress of how each one of us can, fully empower ourselves to act. So we can talk about the solutions, and we need to do that. And I just want to say that we should also remember that we have to first empower ourselves, get past the fear. And fear comes from not knowing. Fear is very much linked with ignorance. So if we can bridge that gap between not knowing what has happened and what we can do about it, then people are going to start to get rid of the fear. And I've personally seen this out already at the first 3 events that we've done. I've seen it every time that people came in there and they're not sure what this is all about. And then just to see the look on their face when they've been given all of this information, and then, they hear Michael talk about these different ideas for solutions, just to see their face and the relief and the ideas start turning and you see their eyes light up. Just the imaginative process is just engaged again. And that's where it has to be. So I think that when we're working together and collaborating on these things, we need to also bring in that, empower each other, support each other, realize you're not alone. There are millions of people around the world that want freedom and that are working towards this. And like you were speaking about, we got to get rid of the infighting, get rid of the finger pointing, and start realizing that, when you're pointing fingers at others, there's 3 fingers pointing right back at you. I don't think that's an accident in nature. It's always to remind you that the solution starts within, and then it will spread. So I just wanted to share that, and that's really the idea behind why we're doing this tour. And I think that people around Canada are ready to wake up. They're ready for these solutions. And so I'm very honored to be a part of this, and I'm so glad that you guys are having us on the show here.
I just want to jump in, and I think we're living in the most incredible period of history that we can imagine, and an exciting one. When you think of the opportunities that lie ahead of us, we've been in the internet age for not even a full generation, just about, and look at the global communication that we are now able to have that was not imaginable 20 years ago, and even 10 years ago was hard to envision. That's one symptom of how this world is changing. Another symptom is in the fight by ordinary people who always want to be free, in the form of groups like WikiLeaks and other types of groups that are fighting the entrenched system by pulling classified information out that people need to know about. Whether they're doing it officially, legally or not is irrelevant. People are doing it because they know it's the right thing to do. This is how, for example, the world learned about the secretive Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement that the United States is hammering out with the 8 Pacific nations right now to take away. They're talking about protecting intellectual property rights. What they're really trying to do is prevent sharing of information freely across national borders. That's what it's all about. It's all about giving this over to the top 100 corporations and having them control everything. And so organizations like WikiLeaks are here. 10 years ago, there was no WikiLeaks because we didn't have a global infrastructure to accommodate WikiLeaks. We now have that infrastructure, and guess what? Poof, they're here. They've appeared. And this is only the beginning. We're now in the beginning of an era of new technologies that are going to allow even greater changes. I don't think it will be possible for those very few dragon people, whatever they are at the top of the human food chain, to prevent all of this from happening. We're moving into an era of 3D printing, which will cause a revolution and, I believe, a decentralization of a lot of manufacturing and give power back to people. We're talking about being on the cusp of true energy breakthroughs. And we're seeing large movements of people. Michael is one key figure in this, which is an attack on central banking. In the United States, we had a number of movements, even in Congress, to audit the Federal Reserve, and they didn't get where they wanted to go. That's right. But the conversation is there. The conversation is there. And I don't think that conversation is going to be dead. So we're seeing it. We're only at the beginning stages. This is 2014. We've got a road ahead of us, and it'll be filled with a lot of struggle. But I wonder 10 years from now where we're going to be with all of this. And I think in a very, very different place, and very possibly a much better place.
I must tell you, just every time I hear that, audit the Fed, it's one of the funniest things, that images that crosses my mind always. Because so here you got this completely green accountant walking into the Fed. It is an impossibility, but just to paint a picture for those people that still don't understand that the banks create money out of thin air. Okay, this is what it is basically. So this is the accountant that walks into the Fed and says, okay, well on the one side you've got 500 trillion or $500 gazillion. and on the other side you got a pile of white blank sheets of paper. And then in the middle is this machine that's called the magical machine. And this accountant doesn't quite understand how the Fed has access to this insatiable amount of money. And it's all in this magical machine that they seem to have the exclusive right to. I'm just painting this really basically. So the answer is, when he asks the guy that runs the Fed, this is a cartoon-like, explanation of what's going on here. So please explain to me how the accountant says how this works. And the guy at the Fed says, well, it's very simple. We've got a pile of white paper here, and we get this at Staples. And it costs us $10 for this pile, and then we feed it into this machine here, and then on the other side it's $10 trillion. I'm not quite sure what happens, but this is how it works.
Austin Fitz is one of my heroes.
That's exactly
close friends. Worked in the George Bush Senior administration 20 years ago. She's a great renegade now, and one of the leading experts on black budget economics. It was her opinion when she came into housing and urban development in the senior Bush years. She was assistant secretary, and one of her first acts was to request to see the budget for her department. Now, she's a financial whiz. She's very, very smart with that. And they said, well, sorry, ma'am, you don't have a need to know that. And she said, say what? I absolutely do have a need to know that, and you're going to give me the budget, and I want to see the numbers. It took weeks. And she said that when she finally was presented with the budget, they wheeled in, those old library carts with the stacks of books, they wheeled in 5 or 10 of these with papers all over the place. She said it was literally an impossibility. Like God could not audit the U.S. government or HUD. It was her opinion that 85% or more of the U.S. government is unauditable. But back to the movement to audit the Fed, I feel that this is significant because it is symptomatic of a growing knowledge among people that there's something desperately wrong with this system. And even to talk about this 20, 30, 50 years ago, the conversation would not have gotten as far as it's getting now. So I do think that there's progress, and I do think that there are technologies that are enabling people to fight this system. Whether it will be as successful as we want to be is up to us. But I've seen a lot of change in the last decade, and it's been, on the one hand, you have a movement that wants to establish an international, global, transnational, fascist type of a state where everyone is surveilled, everyone is monitored, everyone is living in fear and in paranoia, and that is one side of it, and that's what those elites want and are trying to do. But on the other side is the people, and we're not powerless, and we've got tremendous power, and if we organize, if we get smart, who knows what we can accomplish.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Richard, could I just ask? Oh, excuse me.
Sorry, can I just add something to what has been said before you go on to another question, Rick? Just from an individual person's perspective, I mean, unity definitely is where our larger picture power is, but individually we also have some power. And going back to the fear that David was talking about, if we learn new things, then just question those, like question the bank or question the utility company or question whoever. Because again, questioning is non-threatening, but it's also putting them on notice that people are learning and their scam is not going to last forever. And it can put them on the back of their heels as well, right? Because it's one thing to act, it's another thing to react. Because when you're reacting, you're not fully in control of your emotions, and that's when you can make mistakes. And when we are able to, with our knowledge, we can capitalize on those kinds of mistakes. And by asking, I mean, logically speaking, if you're asking, why would they not answer? Like, if everything was as it's supposed to be, why would they not answer? So again, it's just reinforcing for people that, something maybe is wrong because they're not answering that question for me. Why won't they answer that question for me? And at the same time, it's very non-threatening from a perspective of, having the police come knocking at your door because you made a fraudulent claim or whatever. Because you're just asking a question. So that's that. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We had a dog. So, yeah.
As long as it's not a hot dog that came live, we'll be all right.
Yeah, just on the issue of editing auditing the Fed, or editing the Fed should actually be the appropriate word. Edit them out of our reality, yes.
Delete.
And but remember that the Fed is an organization that is not under the control of the government. They're an independent organ of state. Either the South African government has no influence at all over the South African Reserve Bank, just like the United States government has no influence or control over the Fed. And that is the problem.
And the U.S. just blew its opportunity. The contract of the Fed was up for a renewal. It was a 99-year thing, and it passed by in the U.S. Congress and the U.S. media with nary a whisper. I mean, it just... there's the great opportunity. That is why people like Ron Paul were promoting this, because it was coming up, and they're going. We're going in for another century. Well, it doesn't have to be a century. That's why revolutions occur, and they occur very rapidly. They occur often without warning. So, but yeah, I mean, we've got to continue to keep our sights on the Fed and deal with it in whatever way is going to be possible. I don't think that we can see all the outcomes at this point.
And sorry to just butt in as well, I just wanted to say that when you're asking about how to approach people with this, I agree completely that asking them questions is the best way to do it, because when you're asking a question, you're asking in a way where they're going to figure out the answer on their own. And I think that's very powerful. And when we're talking about central banking, even in Canada, our government has the ability to have a people's bank like the Bank of Canada that is tax-free, interest-free, and that is generating money for the people, by the people. But why don't they do that? Why do they instead borrow money at interest, compounded interest, from foreign international banks? That's the big question that people need to answer, and nobody has been able to answer that without coming to the conclusion that it's because they're utterly corrupt and they don't serve the people, they serve the bank. And the other thing that I would say to people is, if the government is the be-all and end-all of the decision-making process, they're the ones that are in debt to these private corporations. So, you got huge corporations in this country, and you've got all these trade agreements that are getting rid of our national sovereignty and all these different things, and the borders, and on we could go. But, these governments are in debt. These big corporations, these big banks are in a surplus. Who do you think runs this show? And that is where you really start seeing the ball turning for people. So, yeah, asking the questions, and when people say, hey, I'm a skeptic about these things, I would say, no, we're the skeptics, and if you're not willing to look at the evidence, then really you're just being cynical, and you're not really taking the time, like Michael was saying. You have to first be informed. You have to have the knowledge. You have to know what you're talking about before you're going to comment or debate these things. Otherwise, it's not really a debate at all, is it?
Yeah, that's right. And to come back to what I was going to ask, I'd like, maybe you, David, you could give us a verbal website where people in the audience can get information, because I know we'll be posting them, but for those people who just get the recording and don't have the access to the under part where they get all the links, I'd like you to give us a website where people can actually contact Richard and Michael, and also you and the movement, so that, like a verbal one here, so that everybody can just go there and get more information. And if they want to purchase some of the works of Michael or Richard, they can do that, etc. Could you do that, please?
Absolutely. For the tour itself, we've got all the information there. It's modernknowledge2014.com. And we have, bio pages. We have Richard's website link there. We have Michael's website link there. We have descriptions of their books. When we're going across the country, we'll be selling physical copies, but you can also get them online. I'll let Richard and Michael lay down their websites for you. But the best site, if you want to get involved with what's going on in Canada, and this is happening. This is happening right now. We're right now just sitting, getting ready for our Fredericton event this evening, and this is a Canadian conversation that's taking place across the country. So if you want to be part of it, no matter where you are in the country, whether you can attend an event physically or not, we also have a subscription available for people that they can get online. If you purchase a ticket and come live, the subscription is included, so you can actually follow the whole tour. We'll be doing access to exclusive interviews, live-streamed events, all kinds of exciting things that are going on, so people can access that there and join the conversation from anywhere in the world. But we do encourage people to come out and support this event. It's a one of its kind. It's unique. It's never been done before. It's completely funded by the people. We have put no money into this. This is totally done by people supporting through their ticket sales and by helping us out. So it's greatly appreciated. And to be able to attend this physically, there's a huge advantage there. You know, we're taking this into a room with other people. You're seeing people eye to eye. You're experiencing their energy. You're experiencing their and this environment of sharing and expressing and offering knowledge is just, it's absolutely unique, and it's imperative right now. We've got to take this off Facebook where we're just chatting, although that's great. It's a great way to disseminate information. We've got to take this into a physical environment, and that's where we're going to do it. So more information on how all the dates of the tour stops, the topics that will be involved. We're going to be interacting with a multitude of very, very brilliant minds from around the world that are going to be contributing their work, like Richard and Michael, to this idea. So modernknowledge2014.com, and I'll pass it to Richard for his information.
I would just want to add, regarding this Modern Knowledge Tour, which is turning out to be an incredible adventure for all of us involved, I really must say, we're going across the nation of Canada from Halifax to Vancouver. At every stop along the way, Michael and I have been already, we've only done 3 cities, and we're doing the 4th now. We have met so many brilliant, engaged, fascinating people, and a nice thing about just by attending this is that, I mean, Michael and I are both very, very engaged, and we really do want to meet with everyone who attends. But I have felt for ages that when I do events anywhere, that I learn more from those people attending than they could ever learn from me. So by you attending this, I can guarantee you're going to be in a room, in a space with many other individuals who are just insightful and brilliant and engaged. And what we're seeing is that in every city that we've left, there's now like a core of people there they're now organizing, they're now talking, they're now in communication with each other. So something special, I think, is really starting here in Canada, and it's fascinating to be part of it, to be perfectly honest with you. Regarding my own work, yes, I recommend go to modernknowledge2014.com, and that follows the tour, and there's a lot of great information, video information, things like that you can tack onto as well. My own site is richarddolanpress.com. In addition to writing books that are on the fringe, I publish books by other authors that are on the fringe and on the edges of our acceptable beliefs. I've got some very brilliant writers who I have recently published books by, and several others that I'm about to be publishing in the next 2 months or so. And that's all at my site, richarddolanpress.com. It deals with politics, deals with science, technology, and all of the other things that I think people would find interesting who are listening here. So check it out.
And we'll go over to Michael here for his as well.
Okay, this is Michael Tillinger, and on the Ubuntu movement, please go for information, go to ubuntuparty.org.za, ubuntuparty.org.za, and just go down the news page and follow the thread of activities, and that'll give you a very good idea as to where we've been and the road that we've traveled to where we are right now, including the South African elections and all the activities around that. You can also get a copy of my ebook on that website, or the Ubuntu Contributionism book. Then my other website is michaeltillinger.com, and there you'll get dozens and dozens of video interviews and other interviews that I've done, and sign up for my newsletters. And also, for those that are interested in the Ubuntu Party and Ubuntu Liberation Movement, please go onto the Ubuntu Party website and go to Join Us and fill in your details, because as it is right now, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be activating the Ubuntu parties in probably around 12 to 20 countries around the world, and Canada is definitely one of them. So that's very exciting, and join us online so we can then connect you with other like-minded people in your area, in Canada, in your province and in your city, and start strengthening this philosophy of unity consciousness and Ubuntu and contributionism so that it can start growing like a wild virus of consciousness, uncontrolled by those draconian slave masters that are very rapidly losing their grip on the explosion of consciousness among the human population.
Absolutely.
Very good. I think it's important, too, to recognize that the only power that the draconians have is because we are not aware of our own power. And that's what's happening now, is we're becoming more aware of our power, and theirs is just a mere shadow to what our own power is.
The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, and nothing can stop us now. Nothing, absolutely nothing. You have to know that. We can't just talk about it. We have to know it. We have to feel it. We have to go with it. We have to empower ourselves to become truth warriors for protecting what belongs to all of us and to move forward. And if we can get past the fear, connect with great minds and share our wisdom and knowledge, then I think we're absolutely unstoppable.
I agree.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Richard, you were saying that you have a new book coming out, I believe, after disclosure, and what life would be like after disclosure. I'm really curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, that's a book I wrote, actually, I think about a couple of years ago now.
Okay.
I have a more recent one out since then. But after disclosure, I co-authored that book with a great guy named Bryce Zabel. And we conceived it in 2010 and wrote it out that year initially, and then in 2011 we updated it. Over the years, because I write about the UFO phenomenon in a very political way, I deal with the cover-up, and there is a cover-up, and it's very profound, and it's evil, and it's criminal. So as a result of that, I think a lot of people had been asking me over the years about what I thought of the idea of disclosure and ending that secrecy. I suppose it's a logical consequence. And it really got me thinking, because what I realized is that at least among UFO researchers, where disclosure is a very common thing that people talk about, I never really got a sense that we were thinking in concrete terms about what that actually would mean, other than the most grandiose kind of utopian solutions, like, once secrecy's out, we'll all have free energy and the deserts will bloom and we'll make everything perfect. And I thought, well, I don't know if that's actually how it will work out in practice. How might it work out? So what I really did is I sat down, I thought the way like a think tank would, and tried to puzzle this out. Question number one is disclosure even a possibility? Can it happen? I've often characterized it as a kind of paradox, something that's impossible but nonetheless inevitable. Impossible because when you look at the power situation, the secrecy that's involved, those groups, those people who've got this secret have no incentive, none, for giving up what they know. They have too much to lose. On the other hand, the good news is that they're not the only game in town. They're not the only part of this equation. There is the presence of these others, whoever they are not of this civilization. I could talk about this as much as you like. There is something, someone here, and they are acting in some way that is important. It's very important. So there's that. But then the big factor in this equation is us. It's the people. Our civilization, which has transformed so dramatically in the last generation and more, is exacting changes. And it is my assessment at this point that, as the old song says, something's got to give, and there's going to be something, an event, a leak, a release, something that will force the hands, very unwillingly, but force it nonetheless, of those individuals who are the figureheads in the power structure of our society, and they will be forced to make this acknowledgement because it will be impossible to deny. Once they make that, they're going to continue to lie. They'll continue to spin. It's not that the truth is just going to be laid out on the table and the CIA is going to walk away from the table and say, oh, okay, here's all the information. It's going to be having to be pried out over and over and over again. But the difference will be that this subject will be fair game for public discourse. And that's a huge change. That will be a huge change right there. And when we finished writing this book, it became apparent to me, it became very obvious
why there is so much profound secrecy on the subject of UFOs. And I would argue it is either the most secretive subject in the world or in the top handful of those subjects that is embedded in secrecy. And the reason is, it is arguably the most revolutionary of all of these. Because when this comes out, and this is really what we try to explore in the second half of After Disclosure, is the secret comes out, the acknowledgement comes out, what next? Well, part of the what next is political repercussions, people being very, very, very angry over a lifetime of secrecy and wanting to know just how that structure of secrecy works. And that's a messy and uncomfortable situation to deal with. Another issue has to do with energy. A 10-year-old child who can observe the movement of one of these objects is realizing that they don't move on petroleum. They don't use gas to go from point A to point B. They're using something a little bit different, a little bit better. Whatever that something is going to be the object of inquiry by the whole world. There are many of us looking at it right now. There's many, many brilliant people looking into what we would call free energy. But now, after disclosure, there will be an entire world where this is going to be up for discussion. And again, you change the energy paradigm, you're changing everything. So that alone. And then just question and issue after issue. I mean, existential issues. You know, what are we? What is our relationship to these other beings? How will we find this out? Who are these other beings? Are they friendly? Are they foes? Do they even care about us? How will we be able to interact with them? Are they interdimensional beings? All of this will be out on the table, and it will force people to consider themselves and the world around them in absolutely revolutionary, radical ways. That is why it is obvious to me why it has been necessary to control the media, control the political institutions, control the academic community on this topic. That is why ridicule infests the subject. That is why otherwise brilliant people who are in the alternative community run far and fast from UFOs because they're afraid of it. 9/11 community, I've spent a lot of time looking into 9/11. They want nothing to do with UFO researchers. They're afraid. They're afraid of being tarred with a ridicule brush, you know? And a lot of these other groups. So it's difficult. But that should tell you something. When there's that much intense ridicule over something that is of such profound, important national security, and that is a fact, then you know you're into something that is very profound, very deep, very transformative, and we have a right to know about. So that's really the substance of AD After Disclosure, and we tried to look ahead, and I would never want to end this book on a downer. I think that there's real potential for great things to happen to humanity after we graduate to a more truthful phase of our existence in which we're true to this reality around us and this truth that will transform us. I really believe that we can move to an era where we're not being spoon-fed lies every day, not treated like little children, where we learn to look at this as adults.
Right. Well, and not allowing ourselves to be treated like little children.
Yes,
and I think it's really important that we start taking responsibility on a very personal level with ourselves, being honest with ourselves, and then we can also be in our relationships and, the bigger picture. Because there is no savior coming, I don't think. The savior is already here, and it's each of us.
It's us. That's right. We have to do this. We're dealing with something very, very important. It's mysterious. What I call UFOs is more than just metal ships, probably from another galaxy. We're dealing with an intelligence that is here for a reason. I think they've been here for a very long time. I do think that there's been a lot of deep thinking about this within the classified world that they're just not sharing. Maybe they have a lot of answers. Maybe they don't have every answer we want, but there's information there. There's technology. There's science that has been learned in that world. In my field of study, we come across very credible claims of reverse engineered technology, black budget technology that's being tested and is operational. And if that is the case, that would mean that human beings right now have the ability to go off this world. You have that ability. If we had access to that technology, we could explore the solar system and beyond. That's the theory, and I think that that's probably true. And yet it's being denied to us. because if we had that capability, there goes control.
Right.
Yeah.
There goes the control.
Yeah.
I know Michael.
Yeah, that's the active disclosure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, he is. Michael's all over that. He's one of the best people we have on finding a system of control in our world.
Oh, really? And he also talked about in his work, we go back almost 400,000 years, and the Anunnaki, and he also covered almost like a circuit board, and there's millions and millions of these nodes all over the place, and I really was fascinated by his work on archaeology finds that corroborate this. It's just fascinating, and I do invite everybody to go and see Michael's work on that and his videos. Yeah, they're very, very good.
Michael stepped away for a moment, but I agree with you. I think his the work, the ancient archaeology work he's shown is absolutely fascinating. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Another interesting component of I just wanted to say another. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, go ahead, David.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just wanted to say that it's absolutely mind-blowing when you think about the amount of ancient cultures that have been trying to tell us the same thing for thousands of years. I mean, this is something that is syncretic. This is something that is absolutely replete throughout the ancient world. Every time you go into any historical account and you reread the ancient texts and the holy scriptures from every culture, whether it be the natives or in Australia, the Aborigines, or South Africa with the Zulus, and you go into the shamanic traditions, or from my field of research, which is the history of martial arts and the warrior traditions throughout the world, and it's realizing that there was also a great divide of wisdom and a sort of a harvesting that took place of that knowledge and that body of wisdom. So when you go back and read it again with educated eyes, and you know how to put the dots together, and that's one thing that Michael starts off his presentation with, is saying, look, we can't just look at all these dots in isolation. We have to be able to put them together so we can get a picture on the truth. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, is we're saying, let's revisit the past. And I believe we were commenting on this earlier about the ancient wisdom, was that we say this is a modern knowledge tour, but really we're trying to say, let's go back and bring the ancient wisdom into a modern day context, and then bring also the new discoveries about science and free energy and new ways of running our society and bringing prosperity to everybody. You bring it all together, and what you got? Well, we have a whole new paradigm that we have to think about and that we have to really contemplate. And this scares people, but if they can get past that, they'll realize it's the most liberating, adventurous, imaginative and creative thing that they could possibly be engaged in, and this is the time to do it. We all feel it, we can see it, and nothing's going to stop us now.
Yeah, I'd like to interject.
It's the truth versus the lie. That's the whole thing.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Okay.
Yep.
The idea here is still, again, unity, because if you're looking at the indigenous nations, what one gentleman had said in Montreal when I was there, he said, what we need is a governance with an indigenous vision. And especially for Canada. Yeah. And that totally made sense to me. If we're looking at everybody's a piece of the puzzle. And all of the cultures are a piece of the puzzle. And if we start connecting the dots, I think we're going to be able to turn away from the false history, the false teachings, the brainwashing mechanisms from going to school, what they've, what people don't know. Like if you're looking at the Holy Grail is within, and it's not without. So, with the Kundalini and everything else, and communicating on different levels. But right now, what we needed to kind of focus on lately was, how do we get these people who are non-believers to actually start listening? And when you're looking at the governments, I've got a document that is called Adapting to a New World Order. And this was a program from a meeting in 2009 held by the bankers and all of the elite in Montreal, which this is a meeting they have every year around the 11th of July. So for 15 years, they were actually, well, I should say 18 years, they were calling this Adapting to a New World Order. And who starts the propaganda?
Well, just right in our face. Just
Exactly.
Right in our
But who is the one that is causing all the propaganda? It's the government itself. They're using the word New World Order. If I go to somebody and I say, oh, well, this is the New World Order, they look at me like I've got a tinfoil hat on. And the thing is I even had an MP who was telling people that I'm crazy because I'm a conspiracy theorist. And I said, well, how can I be a conspiracy theorist when I gave you the documents directly from the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party and the Mayor of Montreal? This is their agenda, which is world governance, and you're calling me a conspiracy theorist? You're an MP for the NDP.
You're being an analyst. You're being a very excellent analyst. You know, the phrase New World Order, this is Richard, the earliest reference in the modern sense of that I found is at least no later than the mid-1970s. Excuse me. And it was being used by the Rockefeller brothers. And we know this is the case. There was a book written in 1976 about the Rockefellers describing explicitly how Nelson and Winthrop and David Rockefeller and Lawrence Rockefeller, the four main Rockefeller brothers of that generation, how they were envisioning the direction they needed the world to go. They called it the New World Order. The phrase was publicly used about 15 years later by George Herbert Walker Bush in 1990, as I think many people remember, when he talked about a New World Order. And as many people realize, George Herbert Walker Bush always, his entire life, has always, will always work for the Rockefellers. He was always protege of the Rockefellers and Henry Kissinger, who's one of those guys. So clearly you have a direct lineage from bankster, financial elite, vision, globalist society run by them, owned by them, and then their political minions, the guys doing the work for them, like George Bush Sr. and the rest, going right on through and creating that. And so now it's no one even cares anymore. Now it's out in the open. These guys are just shoving it in our face, accommodating the New World. And you don't have to break into a Bilderberg meeting, by the way, to find out what their agenda is. The Bilderbergers are secretive, but the agenda is exactly the same, and it is in all of these other types of conferences that you're talking about, like that one in Montreal. You can go to the annual Aspen Institute in Aspen, Colorado, where that's like an open Bilderberg meeting, where a lot of the leading bankers and political people, corporate people, gather there and they discuss. It's all about creating a globalist society in which they are the new lords and we are the serfs. And that is exact. They're a little more politically correct in how they phrase things nowadays, So, but it's very, very clear that their vision is one of control, in which there's no upward mobility anymore. That's a fiction, in which you and your children and our children are going to exist to serve them. That is exactly their vision. To export jobs out to countries where you have got slavery. This is what it's all about. And in my own country, in the United States, they are now privatizing our prison system. And if anyone thinks that we've gotten rid of slavery in the U.S., guess what? We have slavery in the U.S., and it is absolutely there. Privatized prisons, for-profit, corrupt judges sending nonviolent people into prison so that they do what? So that they make products for American corporations so that it says, made in America. And that's how increasingly they want to compete with China. This is criminal. This is horrible, and it's going on right now. This is all part of what we call the New World Order. It's all part of their vision. They're the lords. They are beyond law. They want us to be the serfs, and we can't take it.
And I personally have over 237 direct quotes from various politicians within the last 50 years that have said it publicly, this whole idea of a New World Order. So anybody condemning you or calling you a conspiracy theorist because you decided to use the term which was used by the people that are enacting this so-called New World Order, which is actually age-old, that goes way, way back into history, if you really look at it, then you'll realize that they're only calling you that because they don't want to admit the fact that they are coincidence theorists. They think everything that's happening is just merely a coincidence, a giant coincidence. But if you have thousands upon thousands of coincidences leading in the same direction, you have to be absolutely insane not to learn how to see patterns. And that's really what we're trying to do, is show people it's not just about looking under the rug all the time. We do need to do that, but we're trying to teach them pattern recognition, recognize the pattern. And then if you can do that, you're going to see the big picture. But these journalists and these media people and these politicians, they are the gatekeepers. They are the guardsmen for this agenda to enslave the planet. So, you know, don't let that get you down. If anybody's listening to this and they feel like their family members and the people that are, you know, ridiculing them, they haven't done a second of research. They haven't looked into this. They're just not paying attention. They're stuck in fear. So don't hate them. Don't criticize them. Help to try to do what you can to lead by example. And that's, I think, where we really got to do this, is get out there and, you know, just keep banging this drum and putting this information out to people so that people can realize they're not alone. They can get past the fear, and we've got some way we can move forward in this.
Yeah, well, exactly. I also have a map from 1945, from after the war. And it's pretty interesting because, can we get people, everybody, to turn off their mics?
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, it's because I'm getting an echo. I was wondering how many people had their mics on. The maps from 1945.
We had ours on. We can mute.
Okay, and it's fine now. From 1945, there's a map that I have on my Facebook page. If you go and friend me under Nicole Le Brasseur. And it talks about the New World Order there, and how the President of the United States has it all planned, and they will be the superpowers with the USSR, and how Europe is going to be all under the command of the USSR. So, you know, I mean, and this was in the U.S. archives. So when you're looking at this, I mean, it's right in plain sight. We just never even thought about it. And then the same MP who accused me of being a conspiracy theorist is now all up in arms because the government is spying on Canadian citizens. And I was going to, you know, send him a little message saying, well, be careful, you know, congratulations, but be careful because people are going to think you've got a tinfoil hat too. But, you know, it's like a lot of people turn away because they don't want to understand, or they're fearful. Or they think they know everything without even researching. And this is why we're stressed within I Accuse, Decolonize North America. We came up with a strategy where we try to keep it simple. And keeping it as simple as a one-liner, who is best to decide for you and your country, your family and your country than yourself. And Gail, like I said, she had written a letter. And the way that we're trying to approach the people is to really keep it basic. And by keeping it basic, we're getting a lot of response. And I went to Parliament on May 10th and started handing out these letters that Gail had, this letter that Gail had drafted. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read it to you because I'd like to get it on here so that the people, because this is working and it's so simple. And eventually, the MPs are going to be so afraid that they're going to start spilling their guts. And I have no doubts about that because the bottom line, if you don't start telling the truth and you don't start exposing what's going on, the people are going to come after you. And there's a lot more of us than there is of them. And, you know, the military eventually and the RCMP and everybody, they're not all stupid. They're not all brainwashed. So who are they going to have on their side when these people finally have a vision of what they can do once? See, right now, the military or the RCMP would never quit their jobs. They're stuck in between the people and the government and these elitists who we're protecting the corporate assets of these people when they're, you know, terrorizing our natural resources against the people. So we've become a police state. But the RCMP officers and the police that I've spoken to and some of the military, their thoughts on this is, we're just waiting for another opportunity here. So it's up to the citizens to come up with a plan that they will be guaranteed, their jobs or whatever. Nobody's going to leave their jobs right now. And that they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. So when we went to Parliament Hill, I read this letter on the microphone, and it says, "A notice to you, our public servant. This is a very exciting time to be involved in the growth of our great nation. As representatives of the people, we recognize your commitment to public service and thank you for that. As the times are changing, so are the people. What worked before no longer works today, and that is our situation in Canada. The people recognize that we must take a more responsible role in the direction of our country's growth. We recognize that we have allowed our power to be abused through political party elections and the tendency of our representatives to follow the party line to the demise of those they are representing. This does not serve the people. Only those in government are served. Recognizing that government is a trust for the people, this is an error that needs to be corrected immediately. As you are committed to the people who vote you in, your new role in the near future will be an exciting one for you. Your constituents will be your leaders, and your job will be to serve them to the best of your ability. Acting as an independent in Parliament, representing your riding, you will be the voice of your people, bringing forward the consensus of the people in your riding to the table. When final decisions are needed, you will bring all information back to your leaders, the people, for consensus on the issue and return to Parliament with that knowledge and final decision for your riding. The transaction can be smooth and flawless when you recognize that this shift is nothing more than bringing the political governance back to where it should have always been. So please join us to support your leaders, the people, and contribute to the solution of a direct participatory democracy by the people rather than the problem. This train has left the station. Will you be on it or left behind? Yours truly, Empowered Canadian." We also have one for the Indigenous peoples to sign because as far as they're concerned, this is Turtle Island. All of North America is, and they can sign as Empowered Indigenous Sovereign of Turtle Island, aka North America. So by doing these things, we're hoping, people were asking us if we had anything else to sign. They love this, they want to sign it. And by simply passing it on, we're kind of opening up people's eyes and getting them to focus on the real issue, which is the root cause. And that is our government who allows everything that is wrong in this country to happen. So if you're looking at political...
I would like to add...
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, it's Michael here. I would like to add to what you just said there, which is very important. These messages need to be written and shared with the military, and the various organs of state that are used to protect the corporate government and uphold the draconian enslavement of the people. So it's very important to send messages of love and goodwill to the police, the military, and so forth. And it's important to include in those messages also that as the weeks and the months go by, and there will probably come a time in the near future where the people in the police and military will be asked and instructed to march against civilians and march against their mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters. And it will be that time that they will have to make a decision of consciousness and love for the rest of humanity, and make a decision whether they are human beings and whether they are part of the human family, or whether they want to help to uphold the draconian control of the corporate regime over the people. And that message can be, I've written such a message and shared it with the police and the bankers as well. The bankers also need to be given that kind of message. So it's important to share that as well. Just wanted to throw that in.
Yes, and it
Very good point. Thank you, Michael.
Yes, thank you. And it's working. Like from my experience out in Ottawa last week, it was amazing. The help that we've received and the respect that we received was just amazing. From the police, the RCMP, and they are human beings as well, and that's what we have to recognize. And some of them do not agree with what's going on. They do not like what's going on, but there's nothing they can do right now because they just can't, afford to lose their jobs and to forego their pension plans and everything else. And they're just as worried as we are. So we need to come up with a plan where we're going to be able to say, yes, we want to end political party elections by instilling direct democracy, and, just ending ending final decision-making authority and bringing it back to the people for some of our major decisions. We're not shutting down government. We're not doing anything other than just now they will have to take a little bit longer to explain everything to everybody. We can do that in each of our communities. That's what they're supposed to be paid for, to put in layman's terms. And then we can decide. We don't need to rush into anything. The only times that we need to rush into anything is because the corporations are pushing them into rush decisions in order to get lands and natural resources. So our government closed down.
I just want to say.
Go ahead.
Sorry, let's go ahead and finish that. No, please finish.
Okay, our government was prorogued twice, and so has the Ontario government once, and nothing happened. Everybody still got their checks. Everybody was still working. The whole country didn't fall apart. And when they're gone 4 months out of the year in the summer, nothing falls apart. So what are we afraid of? We do not need to be afraid of anything. And all we need to do is say, okay, well, now we're going to make the decisions. What we don't like has to go. We want full disclosure on everything. And we're going to elect people who will no longer have final decision authority, and that will do the job in bringing us what needs to be decided upon. And it could be as simple as that. So that's all I want to put in there and make sure that we got across for everybody to hear about, because it could be a very simple situation as opposed to the amount of fear that's out there for no reason at all. And that's it.
And I appreciate that. I would just say that we can make it even simpler than that. And what it is that we have to stop gravitating back towards using the tools that have enslaved us for so long as a measure of some kind of a solution. We need to rethink this completely. And you're mentioning the police and the military. The police and the military, they are human beings, but they are human beings that are wearing a uniform that represents a corrupt system that is not serving the people. It may say serve and protect. It may say that, they're there fighting for liberty and freedom, but that's all a bunch of propaganda. And if they can't realize that and step outside of that and start putting on not a costume that serves the system, but actually representing people as a real human being and protecting the rights and freedoms. You don't have to be initiated into some kind of cult to wear some kind of fancy regalia in order to represent freedom and justice. This is what I'm trying to say, and what Michael's trying to say, and what all these truth keepers are trying to tell people right now. Absolutely. Is that we've been lied to, we've been mind controlled so deeply that we keep gravitating back towards solutions that are political, that are based in the same model that has been the enslavement mechanism. So it is simple. It's way simpler than using those methods and trying to hopefully talk them into maybe one day listening to us, and maybe one day we'll get some political person to speak for us, or one day the police will start acting in accordance with natural law. I don't think we're going to get there. We've been fighting this battle for far too long to keep going back again and again and again to the same forces that are at work and the same mechanisms that are in place to keep humanity enslaved. So it's very simple. And I think what Michael lays out with the Ubuntu platform, and I urge everybody to not just topically and look over this, read the book, come to the workshop. You will understand this. You will see that the solution is far simpler than anybody has ever imagined. So as for a plan, the plan is already there. And this is something that is not just from one man or one person. This is a contribution of ancient knowledge that is just delivered in a very simple way. And everybody knows this internally. I've seen this in myself. I've seen this in everybody, that everybody knows the answer deep, deep inside, but it takes a long time to battle through all of those divisions in our own mind. And that's why there is a process that must be taken in our consciousness. That is that we must go within and erase all of this damage that's been done. It's like when you get a disease. Some doctor comes up to you and says, hey, you're diagnosed with cancer. You now have to go through the process of finding out what it was, where the source of that is in order to address it. The problem is, most people, they turn away. They're too afraid to look at the reality. But unless we look at the reality, we can't find the solution.
Well,
and we have to stop feeding that cancer, stop feeding the things that are going to cause that cancer to grow. And that's just, that's where we have to move forward, in my opinion.
Right, and that's where, like, our philosophy was, why are people not listening? Well, 33 million people in Canada don't want to see, they don't want to hear about the banks closing or what they're doing. The ones who are the voters, the ones who keep this system alive, how do we get them to listen to us and not call us conspiracy theorists? Well, that's why we decided let's keep it simple and do it one step at a time, because they will keep choosing this government if we don't have a sound plan and not some, because they don't like change. So we have to go one step at a time, and that's been our experience. So anyways, I will end with that on that note, and thank you so much, because we're almost out of time. It's 2:56, and I know that over there you have your show to start doing. So I'm going to finish off with my thanks to Michael and Richard and David and Chris. Thank you so much for responding so fast and for allowing us to do this show. And I did meet Richard Dolan in Toronto when you launched the launch way back, I think a couple of months back, and it was very interesting. I did buy the book, and we're going to be seeing you again on June 6th. So thank you so much, and now we'll pass it on to anybody else who wants to end on a final note. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Well, this is Rick, and I'd like to thank you all too.
Oh, thank you as well. Yeah, no, thank you so much for allowing us to come on and for sharing your thoughts and for supporting this adventure and this movement. And we very much look forward to seeing you in Toronto. And we look forward to seeing anybody that's listening as well. And bring your friends, bring the skeptics, get involved, and start empowering ourselves with knowledge that can liberate us. That's really the message that we're carrying. And again, thanks a lot for having us on today.
Rick, did you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to all of them, because it's a great opportunity to speak to them. They're very well versed in each of their subjects, and it was a godsend that we could have them today. So thank you all.
Yes, for sure. And my thanks to everybody for joining us. For people's information, Michael will be meeting with on the Solutions Network Radio with Gail and Nicole. On Sunday, I believe at 7 o'clock, Michael, you're going to be joining us. The actual show starts from 6 till 8 Eastern Standard Time, and Michael will be joining us at 7.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Michael and Richard have had to go there. They have other things to get ready for their presentation. So, yeah, but that's right. We'll get them involved, and people can contact them or contact us, actually, through the website if they have any questions about that.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thanks to all of the guests that we had, and we'll see you on Sunday evening.